There have been 80 number one overall picks in NBA history.
For the first pick.
With the first pick.
With the first pick.
80 times a franchise stood on that stage with the weight of an entire city on their shoulders. And 80 times they had one shot to get it right. And here's the brutal truth that nobody likes to admit. Some of those guys turned into legends. The kind of players that entire generations grow up idolizing. Some of them into warnings. And a few of them, honestly, were probably just forgotten about. But every single one of them, legend or afterthought, walked across that stage carrying the exact same impossible promise. This is the guy. This is the one who's supposed to save your franchise and turn your team's entire history around. Most guys couldn't carry that weight. But today, we're not talking about the ones who crumbled. We're not talking about the busts, the disappointments, or the what could have been stories. Today, we're talking about the ones who took that impossible promise and actually made good on it. The guys who heard number one overall and turned those 3 words into something historic, something legendary, something that changed the entire league forever. These are the greatest number one overall picks in NBA history. And we're starting with a kid they called the chosen one before he even had a driver's license. I mean, come on, did you really think we'd open this video with anybody else? This guy is still out here wreaking havoc on the league at 41 years old. And whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny him. And honestly, that's kind of the whole point of this video. LeBron James was still in high school when Sports Illustrated put him on the cover, a junior at St. Vincent St. Mary in Akron, Ohio. He was already being talked about like he was the second coming of Jordan. He won back-to-back National Player of the Year awards. He led his high school to 3 state titles. Games sold out arenas that college teams couldn't even fill. By the time that draft night rolled around in 2003, there wasn't a single scout on earth who thought anyone else deserved to go first. So the Cleveland Cavaliers, who just finished with the worst record in the league, won the lottery and got to do the easiest thing they'd ever done as a franchise.
The Cleveland Cavaliers select LeBron James.
They chose the local kid from 40 minutes down the road and hoped he'd save them. And let's just say he did a lot more than just save them. He rewrote what an NBA career could even look like. LeBron's first stint in Cleveland got him Rookie of the Year and back-to-back MVPs, but no ring and no real help either. So as the years went by with no success, the summer of 2010 rolled around, and this might be the most controversial free agency decision in sports history. He left them. The decision became a national event, a 75-minute long special just to announce where he was taking his talents. And his decision was...
in this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
He formed a super team with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And after a rocky first year losing to Dirk Nowitzki in the finals, they won back-to-back championships in 2012 and 2013. And then in 2014, he did something almost nobody saw coming. He went back home, back to Cleveland, back to the team and city that had burned his jerseys in the streets when he left. And in 2016, down 3-1 in the finals against a Golden State team that had just won a record 73 games, LeBron led the single greatest comeback in NBA Finals history. He delivered Cleveland its first championship ever. 52 years of waiting.
Cleveland! This is for you!
And if you want to talk about the single moment that defines his entire legacy, it's Game 7 of that exact series. It was a tied game with under 2 minutes left.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James! Huge defensive play by the 4-time MVP.
Honestly, calling this thing a block just does not do it justice. This is the block. And then immediately on the other end, Kyrie Irving steps back over Steph Curry and buries a 3 that's just as famous.
Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown.
2 plays, 30 seconds apart, and Cleveland's 52-year championship drought was over. If LeBron never does anything else in his career, that sequence alone puts him in the conversation forever. But as we all know, he wasn't finished making history. He moved to the Lakers in 2018 and won a 4th title in the 2020 bubble, one of the strangest championship runs in league history. In 2023, he passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to become the NBA's all-time leading scorer, a record most people thought was untouchable.
For the record!
And in 2024, he became the first player ever to hit 40,000 career points. LeBron has 4 championships, 4 MVPs, 4 finals MVPs, 22 All-Star selections, 3 Olympic gold medals, and the all-time leading scorer in both the regular season and in the playoffs. LeBron dominated in his first year, and obviously he won Rookie of the Year. So naturally, that got me thinking about this year's rookie class, because right now there's an actual market on who wins it. This part of the video is brought to you you by my new partner, Kalshi. Right now on Kalshi, Caleb Wilson for the Bulls is favored at 28%, with Cam Boozer close behind at 22%, and of course, Darren Peterson is also there at 19%. Nobody has really separated themselves just yet because the NBA season hasn't begun, but that's what makes this thing so much fun to trade. And I'll be honest with you, I like Caleb Wilson here, mainly because the Bulls are rebuilding right now, and with Caleb Wilson at the helm, he's probably going to get a lot of on-ball reps compared to the other rooks. Contract is trading at 26 cents, meaning the market thinks he's got roughly a 26% shot. And if I trade that and he wins, I get $1 back per contract. So $100 turns into $328. And here's why I like Kalshi for the stuff. It is not a sports book. It's a real trading platform. And with over 1 million users, it's the largest legal prediction market in the country. You're trading against what other people actually think will happen, not against the house. And since this one prediction plays out over the entire NBA season, Kalshi actually pays you the interest on this position while you wait for it to get resolved. So what are you waiting for? Go to kalshi.com/JZUncut and earn up to $500 when you only trade 25. The link is in the description and pinned down below in the comment section. Thanks again to Kalshi for partnering with me on today's video. Back to the #1 picks. Now, as we all know, no story's complete without the criticism. And LeBron's gotten plenty of it. You guys are probably already typing it. People point to his finals record, 4-6, and say a guy with his talent should have more than just 4 rings. Others bring up the decision, the way he left Cleveland the first time, or how he chased super teams instead of building one from scratch the way that Jordan or Kobe did. Some fans just can't get past the idea that he's had help every step of the way. Fair criticism or not, it's a part of the conversation anytime his name comes up. And it's probably the biggest reason the Jordan versus LeBron debate still hasn't been settled. And honestly, it might never be.
Hey, LeBron, Ben Simmons is here. We're all good.
The craziest part about all of this is he's still not done. At 41 years old, most players are either retired or hanging on just to collect a paycheck. LeBron's out here still playing like the wheels are never going to fall off, like Father Time doesn't exist.
The first father-son duo to play together in an NBA game.
Because arguably, he's still a top 15, maybe even top 10 player in the entire league. And I gotta say that again, not top 15 for his age, not top 15 considering he is still arguably top 15, period, at 41 years old, going up against guys half his age.
You played against my dad, your first NBA game ever, really, Sacramento. You feel old, don't you?
Regardless if you're a LeBron hater or a LeBron lover, you gotta admit, that is not normal. That's LeBron being built completely different from anybody else who's ever played this game. And after 23 seasons with the Lakers, the Heat, and the Cavaliers, he just signed with the Philadelphia 76ers this offseason, taking a massive pay cut for one more shot at a ring next to Joel Embiid, Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, and VJ Edgecombe. Now here's where it gets fun. The 2003 draft is one of the deepest in NBA history. Dwayne Wade went 5th, Chris Bosh went 4th, Carmelo Anthony went 3rd. 3 Hall of Famers all taken after LeBron. You guys are probably wondering about that #2 spot, right? Well, Detroit took Darko Milicic with a 2nd pick that year. And yeah, as you guys can probably assume, that name still haunts me to this day. Even with all that talent in one draft class, it's still not even close. As great as that 2003 class was, LeBron would have gone #1 overall in almost any draft class in NBA history. Cleveland didn't just get this one right. They got the guy who'd go on to become one of, if not the greatest player who's ever lived. I think it's safe to say that LeBron James was the right pick.
And I want my damn respect too.
And we can't talk about one of the best players who's ever lived without talking about the most dominant one to ever step onto a court. Before he was breaking backboards and starring in movies that were, let's be honest, not that great, Shaquille O'Neal was a 7'1", over 300-pound freight train playing college ball at LSU. He was a 2-time unanimous All-American. He was the 1991 National Player of the Year. And he did it all while moving like a guy half his size, running the floor and finishing above the rim like he weighed 200 pounds instead of 300. Scouts were not debating whether he'd be good. They were debating whether he'd be the most physically dominant player anyone had ever seen. And well, most of them figured he already was. In 1992, the Orlando Magic, who was an expansion team 3 years ago, ended up winning the lottery and took him 1st overall. For a franchise that young, landing a player like Shaq wasn't just a good pick. It was the kind of pick that changes what a team is capable of overnight. And it took him exactly 0 time to prove that they made the right call.
Bowie was coming off the bench as Shaquille follows and does bring down the entire backboard. He didn't break it. He just took it down.
He won Rookie of the Year, and within just 3 seasons, he dragged a young Magic team alongside Penny Hardaway all the way to the NBA Finals. Not bad for a franchise that was still figuring out how to sell tickets a few years before. But here's the thing, Orlando was just the beginning, because in 1996,
In case you haven't figured it out yet, I've signed with the Los Angeles Lakers.
Shaq made the move that would define the rest of his career and signed with the Los Angeles Lakers. He was paired with a young Kobe Bryant under Phil Jackson. He became genuinely unguardable.
Bryant to Shaq!
A guy defenses would send 2, sometimes 3, and maybe even 4 players at, and it still wasn't enough. 3 straight championships from 2000 to 2002, and he ended up taking home Finals MVP every single time. I mean, this was much more than just a dynasty. This was the first three-peat since Jordan's Bulls. In 2000, he pulled off something only 2 other players in league history had ever done, winning MVP, All-Star MVP, and Finals MVP all in the same season. Then, after a public and very messy falling out with Kobe, which was one of the more entertaining beefs in NBA history, for being honest, he got traded to Miami in 2004. And in 2006, he ended up winning his 4th ring there too. Just to remind everyone that he didn't need the Lakers to do it. If you want the moment that captures just how impossible Shaq was to deal with, you can look at the 2000 Finals against Indiana. This man averaged 38 points and nearly 17 rebounds a game for the entire series, against a team that threw 4 different guys at him and still couldn't slow him down. Reggie Miller, who's one of the greatest shooters ever, basically admitted afterward that there was nothing that they could do, because you can't scheme against a guy who's just simply bigger, stronger, and somehow still more skilled than everyone else trying to guard him. That series was so much more than just a championship. It was proof that in his prime, Shaq wasn't just the best player on the floor. He was playing an entirely different sport than everybody else out there.
I just want to say thank y'all for believing in us, and we're going to get one next year too.
Shaq finished his career with 4 championships, 1 MVP, 3 Finals MVPs, 15 All-Star selections, 2 scoring titles, which for a guy his size is honestly ridiculous. He was so dominant that the NBA changed multiple rules just to slow him down. And even then, it barely worked. They widened the lane because of him. They cracked down on hand checking partly because guys couldn't handle him any other way. That's the kind of impact we're talking about here. A guy who forced the entire league to change its rule book around him.
Watch Campbell in the post. Watch the trail. Oh!
Now, as we all know, Shaq wasn't perfect, and his biggest weakness became one of the most talked about things in NBA history: free throws. The man was historically, almost comically bad at the line. So bad that teams built an entire defensive strategy around it, intentionally fouling him late in the games because the odds were actually in their favor. And you guys all know the game plan. It's called Hack-a-Shaq.
And Jeff, for San Antonio, we immediately have a Hack-a-Shaq call. I don't believe it. 5 seconds in. No, but that was...
A lot of people also point to his conditioning, including Shaq himself, especially later in his prime, when he'd show up out of shape some seasons and just rely on being bigger than everybody else to just get by. He was a generational talent, but even he admits that he didn't always take care of his body the way that he should have. Now let's talk about that 1992 draft class for just 1 second. Alonzo Mourning went 2nd. Christian Laettner went 3rd. Both good players, and they both had fine careers, but neither of them is walking into a room and making people go quiet the way that Shaq did. It's not even a conversation. Orlando got the best player in that class by a mile, and one of the most unstoppable forces this game has ever seen. It's safe to say that Shaq was the right pick.
David Stern wonder why the league is losing money. That's why. People pay good money to come watch these athletes play, and they try to take over the fucking game.
Shaq, we're on live.
I don't give a...
Now, this next guy might be one of the most culturally important players to ever lace up a pair of sneakers. Before there was a tattoo on every arm in the league, before cornrows and do-rags were normal on an NBA court, there was this 6-foot kid out of Hampton, Virginia, doing it first and taking heat for it the entire way. The NBA wasn't ready for him, and a lot of people never really got ready for him. He just made them deal with it anyway. Allen Iverson was a 2-sport superstar in high school, good enough at football to be the state's player of the year at quarterback before basketball won out. He spent 2 years at Georgetown under John Thompson, a legendary no-nonsense coach. Even at his size, Iverson was a first-team All-American and the Big East Defensive Player of the Year, which tells you pretty much everything you need to know about him. He was giving up half a foot to almost everybody he guarded. He was relentless, and that relentlessness became the whole identity of his entire career. In 1996, the Philadelphia 76ers took him 1st overall. And to this day, he's still the shortest player ever to get drafted number 1. On paper, that sounds like a risk. In reality, it took him about 5 minutes to make it look like the safest pick in the world.
Iverson has Jordan. The crowd is into it. Allen shades straight against
He won Rookie of the Year immediately, and it didn't take long for Philly to realize that they didn't just get a player, they got an identity. A struggling franchise suddenly had a face, an attitude, and a reason for people to care again. Iverson was the entire show in Philadelphia. Undersized, constantly banged up, playing through injuries that would have kept most players out entirely. And still somehow, he was one of the most electric scorers the league has ever seen. His signature season came in 2000-2001, when he averaged over 31 points a game, won MVP, and dragged a Sixers roster that honestly had no business being there all the way to the NBA Finals. They even stole Game 1 off of a Lakers team in the middle of a three-peat, a Lakers team that most people thought was unbeatable that year. And they did it purely off of the strength of Iverson going for 48 points and stepping over Ty Lue in a moment that's still replayed to this day.
Iverson. How about that? Steps over Tyronn Lue.
And that step over is worth talking about for a second, because it says everything about who Iverson was as a player. He was a guy that was not only much shorter, but also weighed way less than everybody guarding him. He was going up against the Lakers dynasty in the making, and he wasn't just competing, he was taking over. 36 of his 48 points came after halftime that night. And after hitting a dagger 3 over Ty Lue late in the game, I feel that it was more like a guy who'd spent his entire life being told that he was too small and just couldn't help himself in that moment. It's one of the most iconic clips in NBA history, and to be honest, it's Iverson in a nutshell. Pure heart going up against guys who had every physical advantage.
Allen for the record. Yes! A record for a 76er in a playoff game.
He had 1 MVP, 11 All-Star selections, 4 scoring titles, 7 All-NBA selections, and to this day, he is still one of the most beloved players who never won a championship. Because what he gave the game went way beyond rings. He changed how players were allowed to look, how they were allowed to act, and he did it all while playing bigger than his body had any business allowing. Now, as we all know, AI's story isn't without its rough patches. I mean, let's start with his practice comments in 2002. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Because we sitting here, I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. But we talking about practice, man. What are we talking about? Practice?
That obviously became one of the most parodied moments in sports history. I think even Ted Lasso mentioned it in one episode, right?
No, we talking about practice, man.
His shot selection and ball dominance also drew some criticism throughout his career, especially in his tenure in Detroit. Some coaches and analysts felt that his style, as electric as it was, wasn't always the most efficient or team-friendly way to win basketball games. And of course, he unfortunately never made it back to the finals after 2001, which left a lot of people wondering what his career would have looked like if he had more talent around him, or a slightly different approach to his leadership. Now here's the part that stings a little. The 1996 draft is considered one of the greatest classes ever assembled. Ray Allen went 5th, a future champion and one of the greatest shooters ever. Steve Nash went 15th and won 2 MVPs of his own. And then there's Kobe Bryant, sitting all the way at pick 13, who, as we all know, went on to win 5 championships and became one of the greatest players who had ever lived. So was Iverson the right pick? Honestly, it's complicated. Given what everyone knew on draft night, taking the reigning college defensive player of the year with a legitimate offensive gift made total sense. But looking back with everything we know now, you can't help but wonder if Philadelphia would have taken Kobe Bryant instead. Now let's head back a little bit further to a guy who did so much more than just win championships. He basically invented a whole new way to play the point guard position. Irvin Johnson picked up the nickname Magic as a sophomore in high school after a reporter watched him put up a triple-double and decided regular words weren't going to cut it. By the time he got to Michigan State, he was already doing things nobody his size was supposed to do. He was running an offense like a 6'9" point guard, which at the time basically sounded made up. In 1979, he led Michigan State to the national championship, beating an undefeated Indiana State team led by a guy named Larry Bird in what's still the most watched college basketball game in history. That single game basically kicked off the greatest rivalry the sport had ever seen, and it hadn't even gotten to the NBA yet. Magic left school after a sophomore year, and the Los Angeles Lakers, who already had the reigning MVP in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, took him first overall in 1979. On paper, it looked like a good pairing, but nobody had any idea just how good.
Loose ball with 15 seconds, and Johnson has it, and he throws up a player, and he goes. Magic Johnson throws up a player to tie it up and look.
I mean, let's just start with his rookie season, because this thing should be studied in basketball history classes. In the 1980 finals, with Kareem out due to injury, a 20-year-old rookie point guard started at center for the deciding Game 6 and dropped 42 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists, playing all 5 positions over the course of that series. He ended up winning Finals MVP. As a rookie, nobody had done anything close to that before, and honestly, nobody's even gotten close to it.
Yeah, big fella, we love you. We did it for you, and
We want you to get up and dance a little bit tonight. I know that ankle a little sprung, but get up for us.
One final question.
That was just the beginning of the Showtime era. Magic led the Lakers to 5 championships across the 1980s, turning the Forum into the most entertaining show in sports. Full of fast breaks, no-look passes, and highlight reel plays that made basketball look completely different. His rivalry with Larry Bird followed him into the league and ended up defining an entire decade, arguably saving the NBA at a time when the league was struggling for relevance. Magic got 5 championships, 3 regular season MVPs, 3 finals MVPs, 12 all-star selections. He even led the league in assists 4 times and retired with the NBA record 138 triple-doubles, a mark that stood for years. And keep in mind, this is a guy who played the position completely different than anybody before him. Big men weren't supposed to bring the ball up. Big men weren't supposed to run an offense. And, well, Magic didn't care. He did it better than anybody else on earth.
He's got it. He didn't shoot it. 5 seconds left. Magic down the middle, just what I thought. A hook shot at 12. Good!
As you all know, his career ended in a heartbreaking fashion. In November of 1991, Magic announced that he had contracted
the HIV virus that I have attained. I will have to retire from the Lakers today.
It's one of the most shocking announcements in sports history, and one of the most important, because it completely changed the public conversation around the disease in this country. He came back briefly for the 1992 All-Star Game, won MVP in that game too, joined the Dream Team that summer, and even made one more short comeback in 96 before calling it a career for good.
Maybe you'll see me back, maybe you won't, but I'll remember all these good times this afternoon. I'd like to thank you for sharing this with me.
Now here's the thing about the 1979 draft. There really isn't a what if here the way that there is with some of these other guys. Nobody taken after Magic came close to matching what he did. The Lakers landed a guy who fundamentally changed what a point guard was allowed to be and turned an entire era of basketball into must-see TV. I think it's safe to say that Magic Johnson was the right pick. Now we gotta go all the way back to a guy who was so dominant in college, the NCAA literally changed the rules just to try and slow him down. This is the furthest back we're going, don't worry. Before he was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he was just a kid named Lou attending Power Memorial High School in New York City who went 71-1 over 3 varsity seasons. Then he got to UCLA under John Wooden and just kept on winning. 3 straight national championships, 3 tournament MVPs, and a game so effortless that the NCAA banned dunking almost entirely because of him. They called it the Lou rule for years before it got its more common name. He was so good at one specific thing, the management decided the only solution was to make that thing illegal. So naturally, he adapted. He developed the sky hook, an unblockable, unstoppable shot that would go on to become the single most effective offensive weapon the sport has ever seen. In 1969, the Milwaukee Bucks won a coin flip against the Phoenix Suns for the right to draft him first overall. A 1-year-old expansion franchise landing a player like that was almost unfair. He won Rookie of the Year, and by his second season, paired with a wily veteran named Oscar Robertson, he led Milwaukee to the franchise's first ever championship, winning Finals MVP in the process. It took him 2 years to turn an expansion team into NBA champions. He was traded to the Lakers in 1975, and that's where his career transformed from a great one into a legendary one. Paired first with a talented but ringless roster, and then eventually with a young Magic Johnson, Kareem became the backbone of the Showtime Lakers. Along the way, he became the centerpiece of one of the greatest sustained runs of dominance the league had ever seen, winning 5 more championships throughout the 1980s, playing at an elite level for 2 full decades. If you want the moment that sums up his entire career, it's not really one game or one shot. It's a single stat line that took 20 years to build. When Kareem retired in 1989 at age 42, he walked away as the NBA's all-time leading scorer with 38,387 points.
It's into Kareem. Kareem swing left, right hand, 12-footer, good!
A record that stood for 34 years until LeBron James finally broke it in 2023. Think about how long that record stood. An entire generation of NBA superstars came and went, and none of them could catch a guy who had already retired before most of them were ever even born. That's a level of consistent excellence that's almost impossible to comprehend. Kareem got 6 championships, a record 6 regular season MVPs, more than anybody in NBA history, 2 finals MVPs, 19 all-star selections, 15 all-NBA selections, 11 all-defensive selections, 2 scoring titles. He was one of the very best players in the world for basically all 20 of them. Now, as some of you may know, Kareem had his critics. Even with all that greatness attached to his name, he was often described as stoic, distant, even difficult to market, especially compared to more charismatic stars of this era. Some fans and media at the time felt like he lacked the flash and personality of guys like Magic or Dr. J, which arguably cost him some of that mainstream popularity his numbers should have guaranteed. Kareem never seemed too concerned with being liked. He seemed a lot more concerned with being great, and by pretty much every single measure, he pulled that one off. As for the 1969 draft, There's really no debate here either. Milwaukee turned a one-year-old expansion franchise into a championship team within 2 years of landing him. Nobody picked after him in that draft as walking anywhere near the same sentence as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So it's safe to say that Kareem was the right pick. Now, this is the guy I was most excited to talk about. He is the most physically dominant defensive center of the last 20 years, and yet somehow the league still finds a way to disrespect his legacy. Dwight Howard skipped college entirely, coming straight out of Southwest Atlanta Christian Academy as a 6'10" athletic freak who averaged 25 points, 18 rebounds, and over 8 blocks a game as a senior. He was the National High School Player of the Year. And at the time, he was one of the last true straight from high school prospects the league would ever see before the age limit rule kicked in. There was no debate about whether he'd go first overall. The only question was how quickly he'd take over a franchise. So in 2004,
the Orlando Magic select Dwight Howard.
The Orlando Magic took him first overall, and he didn't waste any time.
Alley-oop. Howard at the buzzer! Howard climbs through the roof.
He started all 82 games as a rookie, something almost unheard of for a player his age. And as you know, it was clear from day one that Orlando had landed a generational defensive talent. By 2009, Howard had turned into the most dominant force in the league on that end of the floor.
Oh, what a spin by Howard!
And he led Orlando all the way to the NBA Finals, going toe-to-toe with a LeBron James-led Cleveland team in the conference finals and coming out on top. If you want the single moment that defines his prime, it's that 2009 playoff run, where a Magic team without a single other superstar rode Howard's ability to control the paint, block shots, and dominate the glass all the way to the championship round. He didn't have a Kobe or a Shaq next to him. He was the engine, and it very nearly worked. For a 5-year stretch there, Howard wasn't just good, he was the best center alive, and it wasn't particularly close. 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 8 All-Star selections, 8 All-NBA selections, 5 of them first team, 5 rebounding titles, 2 blocks titles, and in 2020, after bouncing around the league for years, he finally got his championship ring as a role player on the bubble Lakers team, closing out his career with the one thing that had always been missing. Let me show you why I was excited to talk about Dwight, because this actually bothers me, and it should bother a lot of NBA fans too. When the league put out its list of the 75 greatest players of all time back in 2021, Dwight Howard wasn't on it. A 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, an 8-time All-Star, a 5-time All-NBA first-team center, the last true dominant defensive hybrid big man this league has ever produced. And somehow he got left off? Guys with objectively thinner resumes made that list. It's one of the most bizarre snubs in recent NBA history. And a lot of that likely comes down to how his career ended, bouncing around from team to team, and a reputation for not always being the most serious locker room presence, which sort of formed when he was on the Lakers with Kobe. But none of that should erase what he was in his prime. Dwight Howard, at his peak, is a top 5 center this league has ever seen, and he deserved that recognition. Of course, that career decline is part of the conversation too. After leaving Orlando in 2012, Howard played for 7 different franchises, and his reputation took a hit along the way. Criticized for immaturity, for not always being coachable, and for a series of messy exits that made him look more like a journeyman than the superstar he'd once been. And I get it, it's fair criticism, but it should not be the main headline of his career, even if it ended up becoming one. As for that 2004 draft class, Emeka Okafor went 2nd, Ben Gordon went 3rd, and later on you get names like Andre Iguodala at 9 and Al Jefferson at 15. All of these guys were solid players who had respectable careers, but none of them touched what Dwight Howard did at his peak. Orlando got the right guy. The league just never gave him the credit that he deserved for it.
Oh my gosh. You win, young fella. You win, Superman.
Now, this next guy is the answer to one of the most famous what-if questions in NBA history. And somehow, even with that question hanging over him forever, he's still one of the most respected players who's ever lived. Hakeem Olajuwon came to the United States from Lagos, Nigeria, having barely played organized basketball before landing at the University of Houston. Within a few years, he was the centerpiece of Phi Slama Jama, one of the most electric college teams ever assembled, leading Houston to back-to-back national title games. By his junior year, he was a complete force, leading the entire NCAA in rebounding, blocks, and field goal percentage in the same season, a stat line that basically doesn't happen. In 1984, the Houston Rockets won a coin flip against Portland for the first pick, and they took the hometown Houston legend. And here's the thing that people forget. At the time, almost nobody thought that was a bad decision. That wasn't some controversial reach. Olajuwon was considered by most scouts to be the safest, most polished big man in a draft that also happened to include a guy named Michael Jordan. Early in his career, Olajuwon paired with fellow 7-footer Ralph Sampson to form the towering duo that carried Houston to the 1986 finals. But it was after Sampson was traded away that Olajuwon truly became the dream. a nickname that undersold just how good he actually was. If you want the moment that defines his entire legacy, it's the 94 and 95 season. Houston won back-to-back championships in those years. And in 1994, Olajuwon accomplished something that no player in NBA history has ever done before or since. He won regular season MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and Finals MVP all in the same season. Then in 1995, he did something even more remarkable, leading Houston to a second straight title while facing a young, unstoppable-looking Shaquille O'Neal in the finals and completely outplaying him. Hakeem's footwork in that series, the legendary dream shake that had defenders falling over trying to guess which direction that he was going. Well, that technique is still being taught to big men today by Hakeem himself. It's one of the greatest individual playoff performances by a center in league history. He had 2 championships, 1 regular season MVP, 2 finals MVPs, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 12 All-Star selections, 12 All-NBA selections, 9 All-Defensive selections. He retired as the NBA's all-time leader in blocked shots, a record that still stands today. And he remains the only player ever to lead the league in both rebounding and blocks in the same season, on top of everything else on his stacked resume.
Trying to turn baseline. I'll tell you, Olajuwon has David Robinson just bamboozled.
If there's a criticism to be made about Olajuwon's career, it's that his individual dominance sometimes gets overshadowed by the circumstance. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Both of his championships came during the 2 seasons Michael Jordan was retired and playing minor league baseball. And some critics have used that as ammunition to diminish what he accomplished, arguing Houston caught a lucky break in Jordan's absence. To be completely honest, that's a lazy argument because Olajuwon still had to beat elite competition to win those titles, including a very dominant Shaq. But it's unfortunately still a talking point that's followed him for 30 years regardless. And of course, that brings us to the 1984 draft, maybe the most talked about draft classes in NBA history. Sam Bowie went second to Portland, a name that's become basically synonymous with the word bust. Michael Jordan went third to Chicago. Charles Barkley went fifth. John Stockton went all the way down at 16. 3 Hall of Famers, one of them arguably the greatest player who has ever lived, all still on the board when Olajuwon got picked. And yet, you know what's funny about this? Even with Jordan sitting right there, almost nobody looks back and says that Houston made the wrong call. Olajuwon won 2 championships that Jordan never got the chance to compete for during those 2 specific years. And he remains one of the most complete, skilled big men the sport has ever produced. And if you want my opinion, I think it's safe to say that Hakeem was still the right pick, even though Michael Jordan was still on the board.
Olajuwon go, he put him in the cheap seats.
Now this next guy might be the most boring superstar in NBA history. And hold on now, I mean that as the highest possible compliment. Tim Duncan grew up in the US Virgin Islands, and originally, basketball wasn't even a sport. He was a serious competitive swimmer with Olympic aspirations until Hurricane Hugo destroyed the entire Olympic-sized pool on the island in 1989. And after that, basketball became his focus almost by accident. He ended up at Wake Forest and did something that basically never happens with a generational prospect. He stayed all 4 years. 2 straight National Player of the Year awards later, he left college as arguably the most polished, fundamentally sound big men scouts had evaluated in years.
Both teams going to his zone. Great pass. Duncan slams it against the glass. His 3rd block of the game.
He was just a quiet assassin with textbook footwork. In 1997, the San Antonio Spurs, who'd landed the first pick after a David Robinson injury tanked their entire season, took Tim Duncan 1st overall to pair with their franchise center. It's one of the most low-key, unassuming draft picks in league history, and it ended up building a 20-year dynasty. Duncan won Rookie of the Year immediately. And by his 2nd season, in the lockout-shortened 99 campaign, he and Robinson had already won a championship together, with Duncan taking home Finals MVP. That was just the beginning. Over the next 2 decades, Duncan became the steady, unshakable foundation of the most consistently excellent franchise in modern NBA history.
He gets doubled. Shaq all over him. He gets away a fadeaway. He makes it with 4/10 left. Unbelievable.
Playing for the same team under the same head coach for all 19 years of his career. And the moment that defines his career is not one highlight, because Duncan never really cared about highlights. It's the fact that he won championships in 3 different decades: 1999, then 2003, then 2005, and 2007, then again in 2014 at 37 years old, playing alongside a completely different supporting cast than the one he started with. That 2014 title against the LeBron James led Miami Heat team looking for a 3 MVP is widely considered one of the most beautifully constructed team performances basketball has ever seen. And it all happened because an aging Duncan was still good enough to anchor it all. 5 championships, 2 regular season MVPs, 3 finals MVPs, 15 all-star selections, 15 all-NBA selections, 15 all-defensive selections. Widely considered, without much argument, the greatest power forward to ever play the game.
Takes it to the basket. Duncan, a three-pointer. Puts it up. It's good! Tim Duncan from three-point land ties the game!
And to be frank, one of the most disrespected players in NBA history, which I don't understand. If there is a criticism of Tim Duncan, it's more about marketing than it is basketball. He was never flashy, never chased the spotlight, rarely did anything that made SportsCenter unless it was winning. Some fans and analysts have argued his lack of personality and refusal to engage with the superstar side of the league cost him some of the mainstream credit that he deserved, especially compared to louder and more marketable stars of this era. Duncan clearly never cared. He let winning speak for itself. 5 championships worth of speaking. And to be honest, it's hard to argue with the results. And I mean, look at him now. Do you see that head of hair? Even though he beat my Pistons in 2005, Timmy is one of my favorite players of all time. As for the 97 draft, Keith Van Horn went 2nd, Chauncey Billups went 3rd, and Tracy McGrady went all the way down at 9. But nobody from that class built anything close to what Duncan built in San Antonio. It's safe to say that Duncan was the right pick, and he might very well be the safest, most correct #1 overall selection on this entire list.
You have no idea how good Tim Duncan was. Oh my God. Everything.
We may as well keep the San Antonio train rolling because before there was Tim Duncan anchoring that franchise, there was another #1 pick who built the entire foundation that Duncan walked into. David Robinson's path to the NBA is unlike anybody else in this video. He attended the US Naval Academy, and when he got there, he was only 6'6". By the time he left, he'd grown to 7'1", and somehow kept every bit of athleticism and agility that comes with being a smaller guard. In his senior season, he was the unanimous National Player of the Year, and he set an NCAA record with 207 blocks in a single season, including a ridiculous 14-block outing in one game. Scouts had never seen anything like him. In 1987, the San Antonio Spurs won the lottery and took Robinson 1st overall.
San Antonio Spurs select David Robinson from Navy.
But there was a catch. Because of his commitment to the Navy, Robinson owed 2 years of service before he could even join the team. A reduced commitment specifically because of his height. But 2 years is 2 years. Most franchises would have panicked. San Antonio decided that he was worth the wait. He joined the team in 1989. And it took him 0 time to prove that patience had actually paid off. He won Rookie of the Year, averaging 24 points and 12 rebounds and nearly 4 blocks a game. He also led the Spurs to a 35-game improvement in the standings. 2 years of waiting, and San Antonio got the best rookie season the league had seen in years.
Robinson.
The moment that defined his individual peak happened on April 24th of 1994. This is probably one of my favorite stories from a regular season ever. In the final game of the regular season, Robinson needed a huge scoring output to overtake Shaquille O'Neal for the scoring title. So he decided to go out and drop 71 points, the second most points ever scored by a center in a single game behind only Wilt Chamberlain's legendary 100-point game. And it's still one of the highest single game totals by anybody at any position in NBA history. He won the scoring title that day and won the MVP award that same season. But Robinson's real legacy wasn't built on individual numbers. It was built on what happened once Duncan arrived in 1997. The two of them turned San Antonio into a legitimate dynasty. And Robinson, already established as a superstar, willingly shifted into a secondary role to make it work, something not every superstar is capable of doing. 2 championships, one in 99 and 2003, 1 regular season MVP, 1 Defensive Player of the Year award, 10 All-Star selections, 10 All-NBA selections, including 4 first-team nods, 8 All-Defensive selections, 4 of those first-team as well, a scoring title, and he retired in storybook fashion, winning his 2nd championship in 2003 and walking away from the game immediately afterwards, going out on top in a way very few legends ever get to.
If he's not an MVP, he's an MAP, the most admired person.
If there is a knock on Robinson's career, it's that for a stretch of the 1990s, before Duncan arrived, he was sometimes criticized as a superstar who couldn't quite get his team over the hump on his own, particularly after some difficult playoff exits against physical, aggressive opponents. Some questioned whether he was tough enough to be the #1 guy on a true championship roster. Whether that criticism was ever completely fair is debatable, but it followed him for years, right up until Duncan showed up and the two of them proved it together. As for the 1987 draft, Scottie Pippen went 5th, Traded on draft night to Chicago, Reggie Miller went 11th and became one of the greatest shooters in league history. Kevin Johnson, Horace Grant, and Mark Jackson all came off the board that year too, but David Robinson was still the correct call at number 1. 2 championships, an MVP, and a Hall of Fame career that laid the groundwork for everything San Antonio became. It's safe to say that David Robinson was the right pick. Now, before you guys get mad at me, I'll admit, I know this is a little too early to be putting a guy like this in the same breath as everybody we just talked about. But after the season he just had, there's no way he doesn't end up in this exact echelon with everybody else in this video. And fittingly, he's a Spur too, which means we're closing this video out with 3 San Antonio picks in a row. Victor Wembanyama showed up in the league looking like he stepped out of a UFO. 7'4", guard skills, a 3-point shot.
What do you do? Wemby 3, you bet!
And a wingspan that made scouts talk like they'd seen something that shouldn't physically exist. He played professionally in France as a teenager, and by the time he got to the 2023 NBA draft, there was zero debate. This wasn't a who's the best prospect conversation. It was the most unanimous number 1 pick in years. A true generational talent that even LeBron James, after watching him in person, called an alien. Not a unicorn like everybody else. An alien. This is the first time, honestly, I've ever heard that nickname. San Antonio landed the pick, marking the 3rd time in franchise history the Spurs took a big man with a number 1 overall selection, joining Robinson and Duncan. And I'm not sure if you guys have noticed a common theme here. Kareem, Shaq, Hakeem, Dwight, Duncan, Robinson, and now Wembanyama. Turns out if you want to build a championship roster, apparently step 1 is just draft the tallest guy available and figure out the rest later. His rookie year alone was absurd. He won Rookie of the Year unanimously, every single first place vote, and became the first rookie to lead the league in total blocks since Manute Bol, on top of already averaging over 21 points and 10 rebounds a game. His sophomore season was looking even better.
Same thing, shot clock at 5, has to throw it up, and he banked it in!
An all-star selection and a run at Defensive Player of the Year, until a blood clot on his shoulder ended his year early in February and legitimately scared so many people. He came back for his 3rd season and completely took over the league. He won Defensive Player of the Year unanimously, the first unanimous winner in the award's 44-year history. And he was also the youngest player to ever win it. He led the Spurs to 62 wins and finished 3rd in MVP voting. And then, in his very first trip to the playoffs, he did something that nobody saw coming. He dragged San Antonio all the way to the NBA Finals, taking home Western Conference Finals MVP after averaging 27 points, nearly 11 rebounds, and almost 3 blocks a game against a stacked Oklahoma City team. You all saw him. He was in tears, man. It's great to see young guys with emotion like this. They ended up losing to the Knicks in the finals, and that series had one of the wildest collapses in NBA history, blowing a 29-point lead in Game 4.
Shot no good. The chip, it's gone! It's gone! It's gone! With 1.2 remaining!
But hold on now, losing in the finals as a 22-year-old in your first ever career playoff run as the best player on the floor for stretches of that series, that's not a mark against him. If anything, it's proof of exactly what everybody's been saying since the day that he got drafted. This kid is the real deal, and the ceiling might not even be visible yet. Now, if there's any knock on Wembanyama right now, it's simply that we don't have the full picture yet. That blood clot was really scary, and that finals loss, even a great loss, still leaves what could have been hanging over this entire season. But those aren't criticism of who he is as a player, they're just reminders that his story is still being written. As for the 2023 draft class, Brandon Miller went 2nd, Scoot Henderson went 3rd, and neither one of them is walking anywhere near the same sentence as Wembanyama. And well, they probably never will. I hope they prove me wrong though. So was Wemby the right pick? At this point, that almost feels like an unfair question because it's not really up for debate anymore. It's just a matter of how high his ceiling actually goes. And after this year, after a Defensive Player of the Year trophy and a finals run in year 3, don't be surprised if a few years from now, we're doing an entire video just on him. And that is 10 guys who all heard their name called first overall. And every single one of them ended up proving it wasn't just talk. Now, I know there's some really talented guys who didn't make the cut for this one. Guys like Derrick Rose, Oscar Robertson, and a couple others who absolutely deserve to be in this conversation. So if there's somebody you think I left out of my top 10, drop a comment down below and let me know who I'm missing. And if you want me to rank these number 1 overall picks, well, here it is. And if you want to see a sequel to this, maybe a video on the best 2nd overall picks ever, be sure to smash that like button and that'll tell me that you want another one of these. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like and please help me reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers. I can't hit that without you. If you guys have some extra free time, be sure to check out one of the videos that are on the screen right now. I'm sure you'll love them. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.